You are. You made
Okay,
it.
can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yes,
Can
you're
hear you.
in.
Yay! Thank you so much for
Hello.
your patience, ladies. I tried to get over here early and it wasn't early enough.
That's
And the
It's
bad
okay.
lighting.
okay.
Sorry about the bad lighting.
No,
Um,
it looks lovely. I love the lights
Oh,
behind you.
thank you.
it's
Well,
fine.
hello.
Hello.
So good to see
Hey.
you, ladies.
Hi. You gonna
So,
be warm enough?
Oh yeah, no, I relocated. That's what took me a little bit is
Oh,
Oh,
I'm in the
good.
room with the fire.
nice.
So,
Yay.
yeah, I just made it all mobile.
That's fine.
Cool.
oh, good.
That's fine. Cool. So I'm already recording. So hopefully
Hello,
this will be
everybody, then.
recording normally. No issues. And I did figure out screen share. So I'm gonna maybe read a little bit later the history stuff I sent. But to start with, how is everybody? How was your time off? Everything went well, I imagine.
Things have gone smooth in my world. Yeah.
Yeah, me too. I got to see my family this season, so it was like
Yay.
the best holiday I've had in a couple years. So,
That's
Good. Did you
awesome.
travel, Brittany?
yes. Yeah, I ended up going back to St. Louis. So I'm from St. Louis, Missouri, and it's busy, but I was born and raised there, so it just reminded me of why I moved out to the country.
Right,
But my
right.
loved ones are there, so it's
Yeah.
worth the trip, but love the quieter life, the lack of sirens. It's
Yeah.
really more peaceful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
St.
Very
Louis has the
good.
big arch, right?
It does,
Yes.
and it's actually very cool,
Uh-huh,
but
it
if you're
is.
claustrophobic, you don't want to go in it. It's like riding in this little submarine of a vessel, like all the way to the top, but it is very cool. It is
I
it
didn't
is a
know
cool
you could get in
experience.
it. That's
Yes,
crazy.
you can
Yeah.
go all the way
Wow.
up to the top. Yeah.
Uh, yeah, I don't know
That's
if I
amazing.
could do that. I didn't know you could go in it. I thought it was
Yeah,
just
you
Uh-huh.
like
can.
a statue or something or a monument,
You
but
know, it
No,
kind of is, but yeah.
there's windows at the top, so if you're brave enough,
that like I don't I wouldn't even consider myself claustrophobic, but
that's a little
you
much.
you couldn't even get me like I can't go into caves.
It's
I can't
massively
Oh,
tall.
I can't be into tiny elevators because I'm pretty sure
It's
there's
too
a ghost in
much.
there with me. I I can't I don't know. I don't think I could take a trip up that. I
it
didn't
looks
know you
cool
could
from
go
the
there.
outside too.
Yeah,
I'm
it's
I'm
beautiful.
tiny, and so I've always been like stuffed. People are like, "Oh, you're small, so you're the one who gets to ride on everybody's lap. We're all gonna cram, seven
No.
people into this vehicle." And so as I've aged, I'm like, I just like space. Especially, I
Yeah.
thought tiny living was going to be cool. I had this beautiful romantic idea of like, it's going to be perfect. It's going to make our lives orderly. Five
Yeah.
of us, nah. We're
No.
gonna upgrade
Yeah.
our house.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that works for young couples or single people.
Right.
I am
Single
like
people for sure.
I'll watch some of the episodes of like the tiny living spaces or whatever the hell it is. And then they've got like kids with them, and I'm like,
It's too much.
I don't know if I
It
would do that with
really is.
kids.
It is.
Yeah,
That's a lot.
I've romanticized the tiny houses a bit, but then I'm like, I need a dance space. I need a yoga space. Like, how do you find
It
that?
is so much nicer to have separate spaces for different things. Because
Yeah.
just even
Yeah.
working from home, I find it easier to work out of the home because
Uh-huh.
then nobody has to, walk on eggshells and try to
Yeah.
stay quiet. It's
Yeah.
easier. But
Yeah.
good
Mhm.
theories, good storage ideas for houses and spaces. But
Hmm.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
you definitely utilize a lot of that stuff that I would utilize in building a regular house, but I can't actually have a sewing studio in a tiny house, so
Nope.
that would not work for me.
Yeah.
That's right.
yes.
It doesn't work. I've tried. I've tried to make it compact. It's not a
Doesn't work
possible
out.
option. It's
We need
not.
to
Well,
spread our wings and,
Yeah.
create
definitely.
stuff and move. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
it is the
I need
same.
like I need a whole tiny house just for that.
Mm-hmm.
I've thought about similar ideas, but
Yeah.
one dream and vision at a time.
Right.
Right, one thing at a
Yeah, I
time.
want my own tiny house that I can escape to.
Right,
Yep.
right. If everybody had their own tiny house in the family, that's a different story, right?
Yeah, that's the solution.
Mhm.
Mm.
So I didn't take much of a break, but the little break that I did take over the Gregorian holidays and whatnot, my children came to visit, and that was wonderful. So I was really happy to have everybody together, and we did like a kind of a New Year's Eve thing, and I organized like games and relays and all this fun stuff with the kids, and everybody had a really great time. So it was
That's
totally
awesome.
cool to just have everybody and reconnect, and then it was back to the
The
grind.
usual.
Right. Right.
Yeah, the regular stuff. So, which brings us to our topic this month,
Mm-hmm.
which is the renewal of the new year.
Mhm.
If I could get rid of that
Yeah.
part. The renewal of the new year and new acceptance of a new cycle and like the new anything and everything that you're putting out there. So we could start with like what that actually means to us and how we put that together in our own personal lives and how we use our natural behaviors and our natural and how we deal with our own personal lives, how we show the world how we put that forth and lead by example by doing it ourselves in a free way. And so, I mean, at the beginning of the new year, it's always about the renewal of a new cycle, new beginnings, endings, starting over, changes, natural cycles, rhythms, loss, renewal, and new energy. And a lot of people want to chalk it down to diets and exercise, but I never really go much for that kind of thing because what good is diet and exercise if you haven't got all the other shit straight? So to start with that, I feel like when we enter into a new cycle, that gives us new opportunities and new doors open where we can take what we had in our past and reflect on that and be like, okay, how can I improve this? How can I do this a different way? Do I need to improve it? Was there this I needed to change or that I needed to add in? So that's how I often look at the change of a new cycle.
Mhm.
Me too, honestly. I do the same thing. I review every year. For a long time, I didn't look at like what I accomplished. And later on, I realized I kind of needed to do that so that I didn't feel, because sometimes I just look at like what needs to get done and I forget how much I've done in between. So I like to look at like what I've accomplished in the last year, where I want the direction of my life to go, or well, I should say, and sometimes that includes personal transformation. That's definitely going to be a theme for me this year, in different ways. Sometimes it can just be a big focus towards a certain area, but I like to review the year and then actually be very intentional with the year to come, to just kind of track the progress. I've been doing that probably about the last 10 years or so.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very good.
It's interesting that you say to track the progress because that is a good habit to be in because it's like building a portfolio. So all artists have a portfolio and you think of it as like a big black book with a bunch of sketches and drawings in it. But really our portfolio is everything that we do when we're experiencing day to day, and everything that we do that has like some sort of value, we can add to that portfolio. So, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I think everything that was just said, the tarot comes to mind. I wanted to make sure to talk about it today. It's one of my favoriteest divination tools. And the Fool card, which is that first one, the beginning, the new cycle, the breath of life. It's this innocence in this taking this journey, right? Michael Tessarion does this great Path of the Fool series that I've been diving into for years. And when this new year kind of comes, it's like, okay, we're going to start at the Fool again, and I'm going to listen to it all over every single year that I go through his series. Every time I listen to it, I'm coming up with other things are coming at me in what he's teaching. So I pulled out today my notes from last year when I did it. And I had just listened to it over the weekend to kind of prepare for this, because when you brought the topic for it, that's the first thing that hit me. I'm like, the Fool card. And I realized how many different things I pulled out of it last year, and everything in between, and all the knowledge I've gained from A to B. And then I listened to it again this year, and all these other things hit me. And I'm like, oh, and it's because I had acquired new knowledge and things were clicking into place for me. And so that's just one of the things that I do personally. And it's been a really great practice just for self-knowledge and just learning more, because all the archetypes in the tarot are just so. And then it goes on, we get to the magician. Those are our tools and the things that we need to be able to assimilate, in the world. And then the high priestess. And so we've got the higher knowledge. And then we get to the empress, which is actually what we should really be talking about today, not the Fool card. And that real live application, it's the conduit of bringing that spiritual energy into the real world application. So the tarot for me is such a huge, huge deal, and something that you can study. I mean, yeah, you could do your readings, and all those things are so beneficial. And you can use tarot in many different ways, but to use it foundationally in the understanding of how we operate and how we do things, I think has been life-changing for me. I absolutely love the tarot. So if we could do a show sometime or whatever, just on tarot, or, all the divination systems, there's so much to be talked about, but that's my little insight today. I want to make sure we talk about tarot, Fool card, beginnings. It's good stuff.
Yeah, great. And the angle that I've been thinking of in this topic is, of course, New Year being a pretty indoctrinated time of life review, goal setting, and planning for our growth, right? But I was thinking about how this idea of rhythm and cycles is really very fundamentally part of the Hermetica, that we have as a Hermetic principle, the idea of rhythm being natural in our lives. And this new year in the Gregorian calendar just is so ingrained in most of us as this time to mark the end of one cycle and begin another, and enter into a new rhythm. And that this is, I think it is an important process of introspection and reflection and planning for the new cycle, and always being on a path of growth, in ourselves. And as so it's, for me, this particular time, is associated with the darkness, so to speak, this winter solstice and the shortening of the days, and this very natural feeling in me of withdrawing and being very mindful about processing the period of time that we're finishing. And, the truth is that these cycles and rhythms occur in many increments, right? So we have the full year, but then we have a minute, we have an hour, we have a day, we have a week, we have a month.
All these little cycles.
Right. And I think that it's important, like, as I'm reviewing and I'm thinking about how to integrate this with my work too, which I'm a clinical social worker. I do counseling with people. And I realize that this process of self-reflection, review, and integration is really important for us all to be aware of, like, every day of our life, as we're going through each day, that we have these bombardment of stimuli and demands and choices and crossroads, constantly. And so this process of being able to be self-aware and reflect and review and make mindful choices is so important on every level, right? From the micro to the macro. And so like this macro year is kind of like this big framework where we can start to think about how do we want to walk through like every day? How do we want to review and reflect on our own emotional experiences and become more empowered and mastered in our lives?
Yes, this is the high priestess, the reflection and that duality between the high priestess and then the empress, who is then enacting the change. Is a beautiful thing, and it is. We live in and out in these cycles where the magician has that infinity above his head, right? So it's this constant flow.
Yep. It's the stream of consciousness, always, forever, doesn't end. But it's funny. Like for this topic, I'd really like people who might be watching this to be like, okay, the start of the new year isn't about dieting or exercising or something to do with your relationship. I mean, instead of doing all of that external stuff that is fleeting and irrelevant in the bigger picture of things, like go inward and use this time to do all of that stuff inwardly. So I like everything that you were saying. It is, go minute by minute, day by day, and appreciate all of it. Don't take any of it for granted, and don't need a start of a new cycle to start a new cycle.
Yeah. And I think those external goals, there's a place for that in this process of review and goal setting, to think about how not only, but I think it needs to go beyond what the typical person does, where they say, I want to exercise now. I want to go to the gym and I'm going to get in shape. And that isn't really enough, because, there's a much deeper process of reflection and introspection to understand why you haven't been doing that.
I love that you mentioned that, Leslie. I love that you mentioned that, because I have a lot of masculine dispositions where I feel the urge to go do things. But like Sarah was saying, it's not just about the external. And just like what you were saying, Leslie, it's often motivated by, it is motivated by an internal feeling. And if we haven't been doing those things that we have desired to do, it's really important to identify like what is stopping us from achieving that. And so I love that you guys brought in the tarot and the seasons and all of those different cycles, because I feel that natural ebb and flow every year with the seasons. Like cold season is my slow it down season. Spring and summer come and I'm like amping it up and I've got all the energy to do everything in the world. And then fall happens and I just feel, that slowing down. There's always these cycles and seasons and these ebbs and these flows. And those happen not just on the outside, that also happens on the inside. So when I look at a new year, I really look at, from the internal place, what am I trying to bring in? This year, I think I'm going to refocus on stability. But a couple of years ago, ladies might like this especially. I think it was 2016 or 2017. I decided to pick like a word of the year, something to learn. And I think that year I picked integrity, because I genuinely did not understand what was integrity. And so that year was my overall theme through every cycle and season and ebb and flow was learning that kind of a lesson. Last year it was wealth, and I got to learn a lot of interesting information about wealth, a lot of beneficial information. But before I get to that wealth, I need that stability first. We need to recenter. We need to shut off what's no longer serving us. And so every cycle and season kind of flows into the next. The theme of my last year is now giving rise to what am I wanting to do with this year? And I always try to look at the internal side of things, like a feeling. What am I really going for? And then what has stopped me from that? And
Mhm.
I find an ebbing and flowing between both the internal and the external. I'm not sure if you guys have noticed that too,
Yeah.
but yeah, I guess I'm done ranting and I'll let you guys share.
We're here to rant. No, I think
Yes.
I think it's great. Well, the what that you said is wonderful.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think both of those aspects are important. I think there is a bit of a schism going on out there where you've got either the whole spiritual inner love and light, everything's roses kind of rainbow shit going on, but then
New
that
age
group,
bullshit.
that group of people forget that they're a physical being in the physical world. And then you've got the
Right.
other side of it where it's all physical and they cut
Mhm.
everything else out. So that causes an imbalance internally, and it doesn't matter what you do if you
Right.
can't get off that teeter-totter there
Right.
that you're doing with yourself,
Right.
you're never going to get anywhere anyway. You got to figure out how to come into the middle and like figure out how to balance the two. And that takes time. It
Yeah.
takes time, it takes practice, and it takes care.
It's been so easy, I'll speak for myself, to justify why I'm not doing what I should be doing. To go so many years just kind of diving in personal knowledge, but like working my butt off all along. I'm like, I'm too busy, I'm too tired, I got to do this or whatever. So leading up to, like Brittany was saying, bringing what was into now, and Sarah bringing forth this group. This is, I mean, but there's not a better topic for us because this is like the beginning of something, at least for me personally, that is really important. It's something that I've been driven to do for a long time. You learn so many things. I'm not an expert on anything, but I'm a student, and I always will be a student.
Student for life.
For life, right? And so if we can share the things that we have learned or we've come to understand to help somebody else or help others understand, that's a beautiful thing. And I think that's what we're here for ultimately, because there's so much to share and talk about. That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm kind of jumping off this thing you said, Brittany, about the internal and external, this going between the two things and being aware of both.
Mhm.
And it reminded me of like the way of manifesting is a process of alignment with between the inner and the outer, in that alignment of our thoughts and our feelings and our actions. And so when we aren't putting attention on the inner world and the unconscious aspects of emotion, then that is our potential saboteur, right, of our goals. And if we don't learn how to attune and reflect inwardly at what's going on inside and listen there, then we will miss, there's going to be a disconnect with what we experience in our external world.
Yes.
Yeah.
I love that you brought that up.
Yeah, we're talking about trivium. I
Yes.
mean, and if you're not at least knowledgeable or know, what we're talking about, that's without all these things combined and doing everything all at once, which can be mind-boggling and almost hard to figure out how to put it into application. But you have to push yourself to get to there. You have to seek the knowledge. You have to seek inward and outward. You have to do all of the things together to make complete. It's not a trivium unless it's a trivium.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then the slowing down aspect that this season in particular brings, like typically is important, right? It's a reminder that we do need to slow down to notice, slow down to ask questions, to seek knowledge, to learn and align.
Right.
Yeah.
Stepping back and tapping into ancestral knowledge, stepping back and tapping into just the deeper. You got to go really deep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I would also say that people need to stop being in such a rush to do it. Like there shouldn't be any reason why we don't take our time.
Right.
Because growing is infinite, learning is infinite. You don't just stop just because you reach a piece of
Right.
paper that
Well,
says
no,
you're
so
blah, blah, blah. But
the zero there at the top of the Fool card, this is an infinite. It says this is the beginning and the end. And then it's like, it's ever flowing. It's the same.
yeah,
Mm.
it's
Yeah.
forever.
And something that, kind of sparked inspiration for me when both Brittany and Sarah were speaking is like Brittany, you had mentioned like, oh, we're supposed to do all these things, how do you do it all? Just one step at a time. Like if you don't know an area or a certain skill or anything, you have to be willing to be like a fool and be a
Mhm.
beginner.
Yeah.
And if you don't know how to do something, you're going to have to put the time and energy to learn how to do that thing. And then after you learn it, you got to put it into practice.
Yeah.
So,
Right.
we do kind of end up juggling so many different things, things can be quite simple when simplified, but most things can also be very, very complex. And it just
Mhm.
takes some time, some cycle, some seasons.
Mhm.
Uh,
Oh, we lost your audio, I think,
Yeah,
Brittany.
Brittany, your audio went wacko.
Uh-oh.
Left us.
But the Fool is, though, the leap of faith, right? We're taking this leap of faith on this journey. That's why he's on the edge and the dog is doing whatever the dog's doing. But anyway, Fool was they say, or whoever, it was originally Soul, but not an F, but an S. And so this is like the soul. It's like the soul
Soul.
card. The Fool card is this is our soul journey, our soul path. So
Yeah. And I personally think that we're going to do it over and over and over and
yeah,
over until
right. Yeah, I think
whatever it is that's supposed to happen. And I mean,
yeah.
what's the phrase that goes around? Somebody famous, kind of famous, once said, "Boots on the ground."
It's on the ground. Yeah. Yeah, I
Um,
think I think reincarnation is definitely loud and clear to me anyway in the whole path of the Fool. Just
Mhm.
is you come, but these are the experiences we're here to experience, which goes into not rushing. We're not here to rush. We're here to take it in, and those experiences, you might not get that one experience that you really came here for till you're 80. So just chill out and
Right.
take in what you need to take in when it's time to take it in, and that stillness and that awareness too, to be still in it and not be so frantic. And I get so distracted by making sure the bills are paid and all these things that are thrown at us in this existence. Um, so I'll say it again, and I'll probably say it every show. I'm so grateful to just have this place to come with you ladies and to be able to share it and get it out, because it does
Mhm.
need to come out. I service myself, of course. I'm supposed to a certain extent, but that's not all I'm here for. And I just know that in my soul, in my full soul, I know.
Yeah.
We
Yeah,
lost Brittany.
I know. Is your audio back, Brittany? Can you Easter
yours,
Day?
can you guys
Or
hear me okay?
Ashby?
yeah.
Oh, you're a little bit
It's me.
like
I'm gonna hop
watery.
out. I'm gonna hop out and hop back in.
Okay.
Okay,
It's like you're
I'm gonna.
underwater.
I'll be right back.
Okay.
I hear it on this side too. I'll be back.
Yeah, I was thinking as you were talking, Brittany, like another cycle is you're born and you die, right? That's one. So why be in a rush?
Yeah, right.
I mean, if you really like think about that, everybody's in they're in such a panic because they don't think that it's enough time. But really, if you're doing things well and you don't fall into the trap of bad habits, like we got a century on this planet. I mean, that is a long time to be ticking off, you know, pieces of your bucket list, one thing after another. A century is a long time. I mean, and it's not even really that long in the larger scheme of things, because I think we're just going to keep coming back and we're, doing that over and over again.
Right.
But like, I always kind of find it a little bit trippy when I think about people who are living into their 80s, 90s, and into their hundreds. And like some of those people saw immense, crazy change, not just within themselves, like they changed over the course of a century, like internally they grew, they learned, they expanded themselves, even if they're not necessarily on the same page as like what we're maybe necessarily talking about, but they still did it anyway.
Mhm.
And they witnessed in their external environment massive change. Like think about people who were born in the Wild West when they had no electricity. And then those people who were part of the generation and they grew witnessing like huge steps for humanity coming into play. Like they suddenly had electricity. That stuff trips me out. And I'm like, imagine, just
Right.
imagine it. If you looked at your life in that kind of viewpoint,
Right.
what was going on even in just the external view, the external reality of your life? What was going on when you were born, when you were 5 years old? And then, fast forward and think about when you're like 80 and be like, Jesus Christ, like I remember when like,
Right.
you had to use a payphone.
Yeah.
And it's crazy. Like, I mean,
This is
now
fast.
you've got 20-year-olds who are like, what's Thunderdome? And I kind of have to like fight the urge to be like, well, it was a documentary filmed in real time, and I gotta pull it back and not like, prank the young ones too much because, too, too much hazing can cause problems. But um, it's kind of wild to think that, it's like when I was a
Yeah.
kid, we didn't have anything like we had.
No.
We had one phone and no computers and
Yeah,
a
with a
phone that,
cord into the wall.
yeah, a
Right.
cord that stretched across the entire span of the house.
Yeah.
And we were lucky to have that, getting a
Yeah.
word processor in the house was like,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
that was wild. That was a wild day
Yeah.
for me.
Yeah.
So it's
No,
like,
our lives have witnessed massive change, right?
Massive. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Our lifetimes. And like we have our own little cycle of our life with our years and everything and our phases of maturity, I guess, and there's multiple cycles happening because we're in the world of, the cycles of humanity and the technological growth. And, like if you want to think about epics like Kali Yuga cycles and, there's all these different ways that we're fitting in or interacting to something bigger than us.
Mhm.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
There are tons of,
Yeah.
I don't have the words, but it's like I'm hearing Michael talk about it, just how we've been all through these different ages, the Taurian age and then the Pisces age, the story of Jesus and all these things, and Aquarius, and these are huge cycles, right? These are big
Mhm.
cycles that we're just like little tiny blips inside of that cycle. But I'm big on knowing about big picture, right? So it's one of the things that really interests me and why I study so much. But I'm not very good at regurgitating.
Yeah.
Always.
And then it's like though that the key to living each day, like and slowing down our lives in a way is by being in the present moment, right?
Yeah.
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 Absolutely. So I think Brittany is muted here. Oh, so we're gonna get cut off, I think,
Sorry.
in a few minutes, but I'm
watery.
gonna a
You're
little bit,
watery.
yeah. But I'm gonna send a new link here as soon as we get cut off. So just in case we get cut off. But
Fresh. I'm gonna set up the mic.
okay.
Okay.
So
Then
that'll
it's
be
a good pause then, a good pause.
yeah. So let's see. Oh, okay. So I think it's 45 minutes. So we got 5 more minutes. So yeah, I think it's a good time of year. Like everything you guys said is.
Hello.
Okay.
Whoop.
Fine.
Hello, hello.
Can we all hear each other?
I
Yes.
hear you. Yeah. You had to wait until that first half like downloaded, didn't you? And everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
'Cause I didn't know what it would do. I'm figuring it's pulling straight from whatever.
Yeah. I don't know if you can
Void.
start a recording when one's currently downloading. Probably not.
I have a feeling it would just delete whatever it is there.
Yeah. Or at least stop it, halt it.
And when you edit
Yeah.
it in the end, you could put music in places like
Yeah. Just
Pro-
put like really like tingly type of elevator music.
Anything you want. We could come up with our own theme music or something.
listen. I'm telling you, put some headphones on and listen to that song I sent you. That's what I put on when I'm ready to do like a tarot reading, and it really gets me in this like woo free flowing place. It's beautiful. The Egyptian trap music is like
Ooh.
blows my mind.
I
Yeah.
haven't listened to it yet. I will.
Listen
Yeah,
to it.
I'll
I
listen
love
to
it.
Would we
Just
run
for-
into copyright problems if we used it though?
I don't know. Maybe we might have to figure that out or whatever. But that's
But
what
we'll just start like a band. I'll do like the accordion and somebody can do the spoons and someone can do it.
Yes.
Somebody can do the triangle.
There you
My
go.
husband
Yes.
and my stepson and their friend, they work a studio type. They love to do music, so I
Yeah,
wonder if we could come up with something.
it'd be just like just a wild jamboree of noise.
It'd be fun.
Just-
We're gonna make our own band, Brittany. We're gonna make our own intermission music.
Can you hear us,
I'm back.
Brittany?
Yes. Can you
Okay.
hear me?
Yeah.
Good.
I'm just going to be Brittany on the go because I'm just self-emoting it on the phone.
That's
Cool.
fine.
And now I
Yeah.
don't look like Brian Easterday.
That's fine. We were just talking about intermission music,
Yeah.
and
Dun, dun,
we'll just
Gotta add
dun,
something.
Or picking like a theme music, like intro or outro music, even like we
Yeah.
could it'd be fun.
Wish you
I
called
will
it.
keep my
Sethicus
ears
puts
open.
out great music. Sethicus has the greatest intermissions.
yeah.
I like the Nordic music the best.
Yes.
I'll keep my
Yes.
ears open. I have some music I can drop in our message bubble.
Ooh,
Nice.
I'm a music nerd.
nice.
We want to hear it.
Yeah, I just before we move on to like the next segment of kind of what we're talking about, I just wanted to, I guess, reflect on and just highlight this idea of the new year being a time of setting goals, right, for the following year, and that the power for completing those kind of goals comes from the present moment, right? It's again like another toggle
Mhm.
between, projecting forward with the big picture and setting goals in this time frame, right? And then coming back to the present moment on that smart objective, right? The smart goals, the specific, measurable kind of things. And I think that goes along with this idea of toggling between the internal world and the external world, and like mastering time almost. It's like this whole interesting dance of time.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I'm gonna throw that out there.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So does anybody have any other thoughts before that you'd want to add in that you like about the new year, or just some ideas that you had before we move on?
I've got some practical tips and tricks and stuff, and some ideas that people could apply, but we can talk about some of those, a little bit afterwards.
Okay. Well, I just pulled up a bit of history that I was able to find, so see if I can figure this out again with
Yay. I love it.
all
Yeah.
right.
Legible, very nice.
I was trying to make it kind of big so it could be seen as well.
Mm-hmm.
It looks good on my side, at least.
It's real clear. Yeah.
Okay. So some of the history that because I kind of like to pull out the history because I feel like if we have an idea of some of our history, that gives us a better sense of what to learn from and move forward, and just a general knowledge, so that we don't just think it's about, whatever nonsense we grow up with. But I like the history sides of things. People, I think, know by now. So what I found here was quite quite early on. The earliest known record of the New Year festival dates from about 2000 BC in Mesopotamia, where in Babylonia in the new year began with the new moon with the spring equinox, which is in March, which is interesting, I think, to know that it used to be March. January and February didn't exist technically, so far. From what I could find. And in Assyria, with the new moon nears the autumn equinox. So in Assyria, in another part of the country, and that makes sense because, different parts of the world, you have, the sun looks different, from your vantage point, from your perspective, you see a different thing happening. So that's in mid-September. During the reign of Numa, it was revised in the Roman Republican calendar so that January replaced March as the first month. So maybe I don't know if January and February just didn't exist, or if it was just the end of last year and called something else. I don't know that yet. But January and February were added in before March so that January was the beginning of a year. January was named for Janus. Janus, I don't know how you pronounce that. The Roman god of all beginnings. Janus is the god of transitions and dualities and is portrayed with two faces, which makes sense. That would make sense as far as how we use that culturally today. It's a transition. It's taking the past and the present and here we go. Dualities. One facing the past and one facing the future. He also holds a key in his right hand, which symbolizes his protection of doors, gates, thresholds, and other separations or openings between spatial boundaries. The name of the god Janus means in Latin arch, passage, or doorway. So I'm sure if I were to dig farther, I would find even more weirder, more interesting, fascinating information about Janus and where that actually comes from. It goes back. To me, this is clearly an allegorical symbol for new beginnings and new traditions, obviously a reminder to look back and reflect, but to put the majority of your focus on a new life in the future, as always looking back in the past can lead to a difficult experience and perhaps eventual mental illness. So like in my house, how we kind of view this is like, you got to put yourself, in the present and live today, and have like 10% of yourself in the past, because you don't want to forget and you don't want to not integrate that somehow. And you got to put 10% of yourself in the future and be like, okay, this is where I'm going to go, but focus on today and how do we put that in all together as like a puzzle together. So that's how we kind of view that kind of tradition for ourselves. The past is now truth and cannot be changed. So that's done. It's always going to be like that. Change can only happen in the present as you're operating it currently, and in the future on what you choose to do. So I did a little bit here. Numa Pompilius He was the Sabine, the second king of Rome. And he's the one who's attributed to the Roman calendar and many other things here that they attached his name to, whether he was doing it. I have some ideas the farther I read about him. I kind of feel like Numa may not have been necessarily like I feel like he may have been somebody more of like the, I'm for the people, but I'm being, whatever I do, the future is going to write whatever they want about what I do and just use my actions however they see fit. So I kind of feel like he was in that kind of position. He was actually not wanting to be the ruler of Rome. He didn't want that position at all. And he was influenced or eventually convinced into it. And he was persuaded into taking on the role as that political figure. He did write, the last thing I just wanted to pull out, he wrote several books on spirituality. I think it says 7 of them, which what was weird about it is he wanted to be buried with it. Yeah. So he wrote many books about spirituality, and he did want to be buried with it, but what they found later on, quite a long time into the future, they found, when they did find him, his books were actually buried in a separate coffin, which is very interesting, I think. So, and they were hidden away and they weren't talked about. And that makes me feel like he wasn't, like he was somebody, he was put into a position, and then the things he did, and then history wrote however they wanted it to be written to give it a certain look, a certain view.
It's so symbolic of like the duality between his physical body in a coffin and then his higher knowledge in the other. Almost like we have the higher knowledge and then we're going to apply it here. That's really neat, actually. Something to think about.
Yeah. So I don't think, I think it was in just a rock and a hard place, as they might say. And he knew, I feel like from what I keep reading about him is that he was in a, den of vipers. So he had to take steps in order to make sure that whatever he was writing didn't just get used for whatever means the vipers wanted it for. So I feel like that's the position that he was in towards the end. So
were the books saved, and are they readable?
So that's what I want to find out as well. I want to see if I can find copies of the books, which if I can, I'll add them to the description so that people can go and find them if possible. But I'm not sure if they can. So yeah, the coffin was randomly found. So the history that I found was that the coffin that actually had his name on it, it was just gone. His body was gone. There was nothing in it. So they don't know what actually happened to him. And then the other was containing 2 bundles of the 7 books, 7 in Latin, dealing in law, and 7 in Greek and philosophy, which is interesting. Okay, so this is why I think he was kind of put in this position where he wasn't necessarily friends with his colleagues. Is some of the people that he worked with or that was in his time. When they found the books and they were requested by the state officials, they found them dangerous to religion. They found them dangerous to religion, and they wanted them burnt. So,
Of course they did.
so this is why I think that he was in that kind of position, is because normally, if you're going along with the crowd, then the work that you do isn't, revered as dangerous to the state or dangerous to religion or whatever. And they don't go burning your work, they don't set up a book burning party for it. So I don't know. I think there's a lot more to know about him. So I'm going to try and find more.
Yeah.
It
Sounds
looks
similar.
like
Go ahead.
it just looks like at the end of that big paragraph that they were burnt. What is that? The books were burnt
Yeah,
by the
they were.
victim.
They were burnt in the Comitium, the original open air public meeting space of ancient Rome. So, I put that there because just to define
Tragedy.
what this word is.
What a tragedy.
Mhm.
But that doesn't mean that there's not some sort of, scholarly document of what
Right.
people have put
Mhm.
together of what was in those books. So, I mean,
Correct.
we've had society, like different regimes, go on book burning parties and burn all kinds of stuff that are rare, but somehow sometimes there's a lot of stuff that's actually still surviving. So there might be something that I can still find.
Well, it's surviving in our consciousness, right? So this is part of that tapping into the deeper ancestral knowledge. And I kind of my gut wants to assume that these are the mysteries. These are the mysteries. So
Yeah. So that's what my instinct wants to say, is that he was a scholar of ancient esoteric teachings and spirituality, and he connected with that. I mean, even his inspirations, it says, is Egeria and the Muses. And it's interesting that the Muses are part of his inspiration, because the Muses, and I pulled up what that means generally, the Muses are beings. So whether this is a physical or a non-physical energy or entity or whatever, that is changed in construct throughout our human history in order to represent the deity or the group of deities. However, all they are is an allegory that represent the inner high self, spirit, and the inspirational creative power of an individual. I look at the Muses, or the concept of the Muses, I don't necessarily see them as like three ladies who are, dancing and, just being beautiful. I see the Muses as what we pull from within ourselves. It's what we are. It's our one mind. It's our consciousness, spirit. It's, what artists do. You're pulling from that inner part of yourself, the muse.
Yeah, I think
yourself.
it's an example of a part of ourselves, that we have many parts of our consciousness that we can access. And so we have internal muses that we can call upon.
Mhm.
Yeah.
As
And
well,
go on, Leslie.
I think as well as like as within, so without, as well as there are these humans that can be muses to other people, right? To inspire. It happens in both planes.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Sometimes it takes whatever you're doing and you are just doing it subconsciously. You don't even know that you're doing it really, but it's affecting somebody else in your environment. And I see that happen as well. I think, it's a pay it forward kind of system, because it never rests. And so Egeria, in tradition, Egeria is a nymph attributed to being or is a nymph and is the giver of laws and rituals. Interesting. Most of what we know about this currently says that this figure or allegory comes from Roman practice. However, the actual origin of this figure is unknown from my quick search about what Egeria was. And I'm sure maybe other people have done more study on it. So yeah, that was some of the history that I pulled out. So I thought that was pretty interesting to know that we have that in our history, and we had somebody doing that. And I kind of feel like it was, I don't know, I have mixed emotions about why it happened, where Numa was changed the new year from mid-March to January. And I have an idea, maybe a theory, but what do you guys think about all that?
I'd like to hear
I'm
your
between
idea.
things, so yeah, I'll listen
Yeah,
too.
I would like to hear your idea because
So-
I don't know enough about this.
I don't know a whole lot. What comes to mind though, I guess just intuitively, is that I think time has totally changed even as far as the way that everything, that the planets and everything, that during the golden age we weren't sitting on an axis that was tilted. We were sitting on a different axis, and so I think our days were longer and our nights were longer. And so then when we talk about, even I always think about Genesis and this new beginning. And when we go back to Egyptian times, they talk about the sun rising and the sun setting, and monotheism came in, and Akhenaten started worshiping the sun. And I think that was because we shifted and we finally got a tilted axis, and we were having 24-hour days instead of 6 months of night, 6 months of day. So I think then we came into a new cycle. We came out of the golden age and we came into a new one where everything really started shifting. And then the Gregorian calendar, though, I'd like to know more. I would like to hear what you have to say about an actual change. But the 12 months, I mean, we can link all these things up to our zodiacal sign, which
That's
obviously
kind of where I'm thinking too,
which,
is
yeah.
astrologically, it makes more
Right.
sense to me.
Right. And then astrotheology, we start bringing in when we get into the biblical stuff too. We can tie all those things in, but I think they're directly related to the age that we're in, and that those stories and the astrological makeup wasn't the same in the golden age.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
That
And
was kind of some of my thoughts.
it makes you think though, like, you get a lot of people who just like assume that our ancients, our ancestors were just these like group of idiots wandering around, not knowing
No.
anything or whatever.
Not the
But then
case.
how is that even possible? Like, if Numa was such a scholar, wouldn't he understand how sky worked? And so anybody in our ancient past, you hear like you read about them, and they all understood how the sky worked. So it makes sense that also attributes to
Yeah.
how they update how we operate our time, or what we call our time, rather, what words or names or whatever we use in whatever language is currently.
Right. And whoever made these decisions, right, to change the calendar had an agenda.
Mhm.
And their agenda, they also had knowledge, esoteric knowledge. So they understood about the astronomy and the cycles, and they had an intention about this change, and how it probably was some form of mind control of the human race, to fulfill their agenda, based on this rhythm or this cycle, is my assumption. But
Yeah, and absolutely. I think all of that comes into play, because the game that's being played today is the same play that's been going on. It has always been the same struggle. So, and we're going in cycles and waves, and we have golden ages and we have dark ages. And I think it does go in cycles, because everything goes in cycles.
Mhm.
So it's the only thing that's what makes sense to me, is that we're always doing this. So my working theory about this is that Numa was, maybe the anarchist, you could say, of his current group of his current political group during that time. I mean, they're not going to call themselves that. And, during our history, different eras, we have different wars for different things. This changes, you gotta change with how that works, so everybody can communicate. But I feel like it could have been one or two things. Either the year was changed. I mean, also, I do think it's very possible, very likely, that it had to do with like the sky and how the sky operated. And it was like, you got to find a better system than this because it's too crazy or whatever it is. But also, I feel like it could be either Numa going, okay, we got to change when the beginning of the new cycle or our new year operates, because what people are currently during his time are currently celebrating is this totally insane, completely, full of debauchery and just madness, time of year, which some put it in here in mid-March is the season of sacrifice, which starts at March 17th, if I have that date right. So, and I got that date from, I'm pretty sure that's March, right?
One thought I have as you're pausing here is this idea of the solar cult and the sun worship. If that was the predominant, I guess, cult sort of planning the world, then it would make sense maybe to shift the new year away from a feminine cycle or rhythm to this idea of like the sun, the light increasing, maybe being associated with the solar cult and the power of the sun. I don't know. Maybe into January.
Yeah, I'd have to go more into it to see maybe why it was changed on this kind of idea, but I kind of feel like either Numa was changing it from March, the season of sacrifice, to January, to a time of year where it's at you're starting a new cycle of having longer days and brighter days and all that. Or it was something that was manipulated by the opposition that he was up against. But that's just an idea I had, and one I'd have to look into more. So anybody who comes across this and finds more information that might go with that, I'd love to hear it.
I'll find some links. I've just been watching it recently, but my memory is just not that very, very good. I need to rewatch it and I'll send what I find. But it's Michael Tessarion. He does speak on this and the calendar itself. So let me find it and send and maybe we can dive into that as a group and just gain more understanding and clarity, because I have my ideas, and that's kind of a new one where the golden age was. We were just on a totally different setup, as above so below. I really just that's where I've been at, but I need to know more. I want to know more too.
Yeah.
Something else. Now I haven't looked at it specifically for these time frames, but the Vedas may be of some assistance, and the Hindu faith, and the reason being is they have thousands and thousands of years of documented history. So they really have different shifts. Like, we're coming out of Kali Yuga, which is like a cycle of like destruction. And so, yeah, you can just kind of see some of these different things reflected. You can hear some of the different stories. But I haven't looked at it as it pertains to the specific calendar, but I think that'd be fascinating to dive into.
Yeah. And I think you were on track about the number 12 and that being related to the zodiac and
Mhm.
that the 12, the circle, the cycle of 12, and then
Mhm.
applying that to time that we're operating in, you
Mhm.
know.
Yeah, the way that the sun, we kind of go around the sun, it follows a whole annual cycle, and it goes through each zodiac. Each zodiac is 30 degrees and
Mhm.
12 zodiacs, and so the equinox and the seasonal shifts and astrology, not just astrology, I should say more than anything, astronomy is
yeah.
is useful, because that would be more, astrology is like the archetype, similar to the tarot, but the
Yeah.
astronomy is really where there might be some more meat and potatoes. Another
Yeah.
area to study and see different reflections, because I can't help but notice that every culture has their own kind of themes of things, like the medicine wheel, and they all have their similar reflections between all of
Yeah.
them. It's very fascinating.
Yeah,
You know-
and it makes sense that for forever they're following the constellations. They're
Well-
following the stars and what's in there. I mean, Numa had to add days to that calendar to create January and February. He had to it was already that long. It's just he had to shorten all the other months and create 2 months to make it work. So,
And a
There's
leap
also
year.
so the lunar calendar, which is the moon calendar, is 13 months. So there would be shorter months, but more of them. And there was a shift away from the lunar to the solar, which involved adding more days to the months. And then I think there's like 5 extra days. I remember Brandon Martin did a podcast and he was talking about these 5 extra days that were that have significance, which I can't remember now.
Right, I'm right there with you. But so the Hebrew calendar, which the Jewish is a lunar thing, and Christianity is more of a solar thing. So that it brings me back to that too.
I think the Jewish is stellar, isn't it? And then Islam is lunar.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So there's solar, stellar, lunar.
Lunar. Okay, you're right. You're right.
Yeah. And Nate Cap does some work on this too, and the really deep esoteric aspects of it, and shifting perspectives to it being very much of a left brain dominant world that is being, kind of overshadowing the feminine. Yeah.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I think just as a conclusion, I would like to just go over how it is that we take the information that we know and that we grow from and learn from for the past year, the last cycle, and how are we going to use that as a tool to enhance this cycle?
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'll start. I think I guess I just have to use my personal stuff, and it's always going to come back to self-knowledge for me, because I think that's where everybody should start. This past year has been a lot of digging into myself, as far maybe even just human design and astrology and tarot, of course, all these things, all the divination tools I try to bring in. But it's something you have to do for yourself. But in that, I've expanded out, and we've done human design charts on everybody in the family, and we keep them posted up, and we're all fully aware of our type and how we innately operate and what our big 3 are. And we try to put these things into practical application in a way of almost we're respecting each other. I know that you don't operate the way that I do. And you don't necessarily think innately like I do. So we give ourselves all some grace, and you can't do that unless you have the awareness that this exists, that yeah, we're all human, but we're so different. And so that would be my encouragement to blast out, would be, get yourself immersed in yourself, get yourself a human design reading, or find somebody that can help you work through one, or figure out who you are, because until you do, then you can't really figure out or have that inner the guardian. It's like the guardian of our intuition, and being able to actually produce and assimilate life and do the best that we possibly can. So trying to get the children to do that is not, they're not as interested, but at least they're listening, and they're like, okay, mom and dad are really into this, and they told me that I'm this way. But even our 12-year-old, like, he knows what type he is, and he knows he's a projector, and so he knows that he operates a certain way, and we do too. So when he tells us no, it's not like there's so much to that conversation. Like most parents, like, your child tells you no and you're like, oh, but when he says no, it's because he probably has a really good reason of why he's telling you no. And if you give him the opportunity to give you his reason, then it's like, okay, we could talk about it. We could talk about why you think you should say no, or why you shouldn't have to do that. So it creates this like flow within our family unit. And those things are birthed out of doing our charts and doing ourself and finding out who we are and who the other person is in the family too, so we can understand them better. So for me, I really wanted to put that out today. New beginnings, and starting fresh or whatever, like, it'll always be with self, or you're you're spinning your wheels, as far as I'm concerned.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll just add or highlight, that I think if we can go forward with this dual awareness of the kind of linear masculine goal achievement focus that we tend to associate with this Gregorian New Year, and keeping that in our awareness with that feminine sense, that feminine inward reflection, that attunement with our body and to the daily and momentary rhythms of ourself in relationship with the earth. Mm-hmm. That is, I think, the way to proceed forward, holding mm-hmm. both.
With a healthy masculine balance, right? And same for the guys, like, to attain a healthy feminine balance within themselves is well, we know even more like how beneficial the life bringer is, that feminine life bringer, motherly maven type is. It's really powerful, but the masculine just the same. They are both so equally important.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I guess there's so many different things. So I guess to add on to what you guys were saying, I'll look at it maybe from like a practical place. A way that I've really moved into seasons is to, like, moving into the next year, I should say, is to observe the seasons in my life. I can't help but notice there are certain themes of lessons. And so you could look at the overall themes of your life. You can look at what happened, were there any huge events? What's important? What was highlighted as important to you? What is something you desire or need more of? And what's the feeling underneath that? Why do you desire it? Really, you can understand things internally very deeply before even taking action. But once you have a level of clarity, that's when you can design your actions to start towards that path towards your goal. But understand where those desires and motivations are coming from. Look at the themes of your year and help, I guess, use that to help you. There we go. To move into where you're wanting to go from there.
Right. It's no longer an internal observation. It becomes the change. It becomes the do. Mm-hmm. Which is, we'll come back to the trivium, which is the 3, and we come back to the Empress, which is card number 3, which is marked by the Hebrew letter Dalet, which is Daleth, which is like doorway, which we talked about earlier. So this is your pathway to the higher knowledge and your pathway to the assimilation, to the change.
Yeah. And like the Norns, the 3, the past, present, future, the weaving of the web of creation, looking with the face looking both direction, but being in the present as the creator of the future. I love it.
So do you have any other finishing thoughts, Brittany?
No, not necessarily. I was just going to ask you because you asked the question to all of us. So I wanted to ask you your thoughts too.
Oh, I just wanted to put it out there for people out there to be sure that in this cycle and every day and every news cycle that you hit, whether it's January 1st or it's the middle of a year because it just works out that way, or in your own private inner cycles, not just your external environmental cycles, to keep your heart and mind and eyes open and pay with your attention and operate with your currency that is care, and take one thing at a time, step by step, baby steps if you have to, and don't feel like it's got to be rush, 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 and time is running out, and the sky is falling, Chicken Little. Pull it back, pull that energy back, and if you have to, sit down with a piece of paper and a pen and write down a list of shit, to do. As women usually like to do, inventory that shit, and then go through it bit by bit. And that list can literally sit on a notepad on your phone or your device or on a scrap of paper in your nightstand for years until you get to your end goal, to where you really want to be.
Yeah.
And don't be afraid of that.
Yeah. And notice all the movement in the right direction, right? Notice the small wins on the way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely helps keep you going for sure.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And don't be so rigid with
Mm-hmm.
how you do this. Like don't think it has to be textbook. Don't think you have to have a book that operates this, where you just read instructions and you follow instructions,
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you just got to go through life, and you've got to bend like a reed in the wind, and you got to just, you got to not look at how you're going to bake that cake. You just got to throw that shit in that bowl and mix it up and hope that it, like, all right, let's have it. You're like, well, it tastes like sugar, so I guess it worked out,
Or you learn from that mistake, right? And then you self-learn, right? And then you try it the next time a little different, and you don't give up.
That's
right.
it.
And it's not going to look like somebody else's. Yours is so individual to you every single time. But you have to do the work. It's not like we all said it maybe sounds a little easy, but it really isn't, is it? It takes a lot of work, and the dark spaces that are not so fun to be in.
Yeah.
You have to go there and be there. That's where the list should probably start.
Yeah, with care and patience, and just time. And no one's like falling out of the womb being Gordon Ramsay whipping up some badass shit, like we gotta like figure out how to bake the cake awesome, and that takes throwing out a billion cakes first. So that's
Ain't that the truth?
that's just the message I would give to everybody.
That's a great perspective of an artist, right? And life
is
our art.
Yeah, it's true.
I've thrown a million canvases away. Into the dumpster you go, because you're terrible.
But that's how you refine things. That's how you refine things and make it better.
Yeah, it's like I'm not erasing shit. I'm just gonna throw it on and get a new canvas and move on.
Yeah,
and I strongly encourage that kind of, maybe, don't be wasteful. Of course, that sounds very wasteful, but don't be afraid to just.
It was part of the journey, right? That canvas was part of the journey.
Yep.
That's where you learned.
And you probably painted on it like several layers before you threw it away, right?
That's it. What you end up doing, you're just like, and then one day you're just done with it. You're like, I'm done with this.
Yeah.
So Yeah, that would be my message.
Sounds good. This is a good conversation. I like.
Yeah. Thanks,
I like where
ladies.
it went. Yeah, very
Yeah.
much.
Thank
I
you
like
guys.
gathering with you ladies. It's been fun.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. Thanks for everyone who's listening. Yeah, I think we have a lot of exciting possibilities for this group. So
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you
I would agree with
for
that.
thank you for meeting again.
And again.
Start of the new year, and we've got quite a few more months planned out already. And who knows, that might change as we go through, but we're going to be adding and figuring that out as we go along. So, and anybody watching out there, please don't be afraid to comment or, contact us somehow and let us know your thoughts. And until next month, we'll, keep it real.
that's
Very
right.
grateful, Sarah, for your willingness to kind of put everything together and take all the notes and bring all the topics and keep us
Mhm.
organized and being the conduit that brings us all together is a huge deal. So I know we're all very grateful for that and for
Yeah.
this time.
Word.
Word. Leslie.
Me too. Thank you, ladies, for making time. And yeah, I look forward to our next talk.
Yeah.
Thank you guys.
Very
Thank
much
you.
so.